What did John McCain know about the economy, and when did he know it? Our number 4 story tonight, as record numbers of Americans face foreclosure, paying $4 a gallon to drive to their bankruptcy hearings. Senator McCain today denied ever saying he's not an expert on the economy, something he has denied and been corrected on before. Here was his latest attempt to rewrite a history that he himself wrote.
You have admitted that you're not exactly an expert when it comes to the economy, and many have said that
I have not. I actually have not. I said that I am stronger on national security issues because of all the time I spent in the military and others. I'm very strong on the economy. I understand it. I have a lot more experience than my opponent.
It's not a new question or a new answer. Tim Russert called him on it successfully in January.
Here's a question I asked you and your response. Let's watch.
Senator McCain, you have said repeatedly, quote, I know a lot less about economics than I do about military and foreign policy issues. I still need to be educated. Is it a problem for your campaign that the economy is now the most important issue, one that, by your own acknowledgement, you are not well versed on?
Actually, I don't know where you got that quote from. I'm very well versed in economics.
Well, now I know where you got the quote from. Now I know where you got the quote from.
I will show you where I got the quote from. I got it from John McCain, and here it is. McCain is refreshingly blunt when he tells me, quote, I'm going to be honest. I know a lot less about economics than I do about military and foreign policy issues. I still need to be educated. Wall Street Journal, November 26, 2005. You repeated it to the Boston Globe in December of 2007. You said it.
Okay.
In addition to the Journal and the Globe, there is, of course, tape of McCain misstating the core problem of the mortgage crisis, the fact that lenders no longer have the mortgages they made. And then he admits to, yes, a lack of expertise on the subject.
We've got to provide more incentive for borrower and lender to work it out so that these people are, so that millions of people around this country are not deprived of one of the fundamental goals of all Americans, and that is the ability to own our own home. Now, I am not an expert on Wall Street. I am not an expert on some of this stuff.
McCain has said he would rely on the advice of former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan, despite the fact Greenspan dismissed warnings about the looming mortgage crisis. And on more than one occasion, publicly and privately, McCain has deferred questions about the economy to advisors like former Senator Phil Gramm, despite the fact that Gramm helped cause the crisis by deregulating the banks. With us tonight on this is LA Times columnist Rosa Brooks. Thanks for joining us, Rosa.
It's a pleasure to be here, Rachel.
Simple question. Why keep denying it when the whole world's got the Google and the YouTube to prove him wrong on this?
Well, there are 3 possible explanations. Possibility number 1, he's got an arrogance problem and he thinks people are too dumb to look this stuff up. Possibility number 2, actually I should say these are overlapping possibilities. They could be all of them. Okay. He's got an integrity problem and he just flip-flops and says whatever's convenient at any given moment. Possibility number 3, and this possibly is even worse, he's got a cognitive problem. He just can't remember what he said.
Wow. Well, the thing that is weird politically about this is that it's not just him alone. It's his whole campaign. Even McCain's own advisors are on record saying, yeah, he said exactly what you thought he said. And then they roll out the excuses. And the excuses so far are, you took it out of context, or he was joking, or it's just his charming self-deprecating humor. I mean, how messed up is it politically at this stage of McCain's campaign that not only he, but his big thinkers and advisors can't come up with a single coherent narrative to put this issue to bed?
They're doing their best to save him from himself, and, you know, I take my hat off to them, but it's kind of a hard job. And, you know, I am not one of those people who thinks that the sign of a good politician is somebody who never changes their mind. I don't think any of us need politicians or want politicians who are incapable of changing their mind when they get new evidence. But what really drives me nuts about this stuff, you know, in some ways his advisors are saying the only possible thing they can say is if he's changed his mind on anything, that's okay. But then come to us and say, look, here's why I thought this way then, here's why I've changed my mind. He's not doing that. He's just denying it. It didn't happen. You know, that's not particularly persuasive, and it suggests that his campaign is a mess and his policies are a mess.
And of course there's the great double standard about the 2004 presidential campaign, where John Kerry's policy changes was the biggest issue in the world, and because
windsurfing,
that became the narrative of the campaign for the media and for everybody because the Bush campaign defined it that way.
Yep, absolutely.
But it's not just changing your mind or changing your position on something, though. This is saying, making misstatements. This is lying. And McCain has admitted to lying about his own opinion of the Confederate flag to try to win South Carolina in 2000. Now there's this big obvious I didn't say it lie about whether he understands economics. How many things like this do you have to stack up before we get to the second of your third options, that he has an integrity issue, a can you believe him problem to contend with?
I think he's courting that problem right now. I mean, your double talk express line is a good one, and unfortunately he's made himself vulnerable to that charge. You know, again, it's not that hard to say, yes, I had one position then, I have a totally different position now. Here is why. You know, here's the evidence that made me re-examine my old assumptions. Here's what changed in the outside world that made me decide that a new solution to this problem was appropriate, different from the one I used to believe in. He's not doing that, and it does come across as just an integrity problem, and I think voters are beginning to sense that. He was sitting watching the footage of McCain and Tim Russert. He's sitting there looking extremely uncomfortable when confronted with the footage of his own previous statements.
More substantively, beyond how he is campaigning and the integrity issues raised here, is the bigger issue here not just his lack of expertise or his denial about that, but really his plans on the economy? I mean, the flip on the tax cuts, having Phil Gramm as an advisor, this trillionaire corporate tax cut deficit disaster thing, that's the bigger issue sort of looming over this whole kerfuffle, right?
You know, the irony is that John McCain was right about his degree of economic understanding before he was wrong about it. You know, the reality is he doesn't know what he's talking about, and his economic policies show it. They're disastrous. We're in the middle of a extremely serious recession. Wall Street just had its worst June since 1930. Boy, that's not a good thing. And John McCain is still saying things like a lot of this is just psychological. He's still saying he's still proposing a series of tax cuts that even the Wall Street Journal, usually on his side of the fence, is saying this would be disastrous, would explode the budget deficit, and would require cutting federal spending by about a third. You know, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Rosa Brooks, columnist for the Los Angeles Times, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Rachel.